Good evening, everyone. It's March 14th, and this is the meeting of the Evanston Plan Commission. Can I ask staff to call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Belial, Commissioner Brown, Commissioner Dubin, present. Commissioner Goddard, here. Commissioner Halleck, here. Just in time. Commissioner Isaac, here. Commissioner Pagozzi, yeah. Vice Chair Saul, here. And Chair Lewis.
Here. All right. So we have a quorum. So tonight, on the agenda tonight, we have a couple of items. There are a few things that I would like to ask of the audience. Is one, can you please silence your cell phones? And two, if you wish to speak, there is a sign up outside the door. So if you can please sign that. And then when you come to speak at the microphone. That's for a couple of reasons, so the camera can get you and then that we can record your voice, all right? We have on the agenda approval of the minutes of the meeting of February 21st. Are there any corrections, annotations? No one? Well, I have one. It cites Chairman Ford in the first line, and I believe I was chairman at that time. So if that can be corrected.
We will make that correction,
all
Mr.
right,
Chairman.
Thank you. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes? All right. Second? Second. Saul? All right. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All against? All right. The minutes pass. All right. The next item on the agenda. We have two items on the agenda. First is the petition of the 1727 Oak Avenue Plan Development, and the second is a text amendment that will follow that. So when we're done with the 1721, you're free to go if you don't want to stick around for the excitement of the text amendment. All right? So the first case is the plan development at 1727 Oak Avenue, number 18 PLND-005. Staff, would you like to make a presentation? Oh, I should back up. All right. First of all, staff, just a little outline of the procedure for the hearing. First of all, staff will make a presentation. Then the petitioner will present their case. After that, there's an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of the petitioner. All right, this is simply questions of the petitioner. This is not public statements. And then the petitioner can either cross-examine or ask questions of the petitioners for clarification. So after that, members of the public will be able to speak and make their point. If there is a request for a continuance, it should happen at that time. We want to give people an opportunity to speak, but if they speak tonight, they will not have the opportunity to speak if there is a continuance requested. The last thing I should mention is that this is not the final word on this case. The Plan Commission is a recommending body and a fact-finding body. The final say is with the City Council. So tonight we can either make a recommendation to pass the the petition as is, or pass it with modifications, or to recommend denial of the application. So those are the three things, but we're a recommending body. All right, and so why don't we go to the presentation by staff?
Thank you, Chair Lewis. Good evening, Melissa Klotz, zoning planner. And tonight we're going to be looking at the plan development proposal at 1727 Oak. As Chair Lewis said, it is case 18 PLND 0005. This plan development is requesting 4 site development allowances. Those site development allowances are for height, number of units, front yard setback, and number of loading berths. And if you can see not too clearly, we are talking about this parcel right here that is currently a surface parking lot. The proposed plan development is an age-restricted active adult facility for age 55 and older. The property size, once subdivided as proposed, would be 35,240 square feet with a building size of 149,571 gross square feet. It is a mixture of studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedroom units totaling 169 units. And the applicant is requesting a total of 139 parking spaces, where 122 are required for a 0.82 parking to unit ratio. The proposed height is 17 stories. That's a peak height of 176 feet, with zoning recognizing it as a height of 155 feet, excluding 2 levels of parking. This is the general first floor site plan that also shows some streetscape improvements and landscaping. As you can see, this is the building outline along here. This first floor has some parking that leads up to second and third floor parking levels. And then along the street frontage here is the general amenity space. Of the site development allowances requested, first going with lot size, the zoning ordinance allows up to 117 dwelling units, and the applicant is proposing 169. Building height by zoning allowed is 85 feet plus parking floors. The applicant is requesting 155 feet plus parking floors. Also requested is the front yard setback. The front yard setback required is the average of the block, which is at 3 feet. The applicant requests 1 feet for the first floor, compliant with the first floor, but then 1 foot at floors 2 and 3 only. And then lastly, the applicant requests to have 1 short loading berth where 2 are required. Other than the second and third floor setbacks for the front yard, all other setbacks do comply with the zoning ordinance. There have been discussions of a number of public benefits for the proposal, namely a public dog park at the north end of the property, wayfinding signage on the property for a city fitness route, quite a few bike stalls near the dog park, repainting the bike lane that's on Church Street between Oak and Maple, relocation of a city fire hydrant that allows an increase of street parking, as well as an increase of 2 ADA compliant stalls that will be near the 1007 Church building. Within the building, there would be a transit tracker TV. There are design elements that are mitigating harm to migratory birds. The addition of 6 additional canopy trees along the right-of-way over what is currently there. A pedestrian countdown ticker at the intersection of Ridge and Church Street. And 17 on-site affordable housing units rather than paying the fee in lieu of. However, it is noted that that is a city code requirement, not necessarily a public benefit, although it is reasonable to consider it a public benefit to have the units on site instead of the fee. Also to note that with the area median incomes proposed, it does not meet the city requirement to code. The applicant is requesting that it is considered an equivalent. Lastly, staff recommends a number of conditions on the proposal. Specifically that it complies with the plans that are discussed here at Plan Commission and if and as things move forward. Also that a traffic study be done after 1 year after the building is in operation to see if any modifications to vehicle turning or pedestrian safety measures need to be undertaken. A few other conditions required that the 17 on-site affordable housing units be maintained for a minimum of 25 years. That on-site building management ensures that delivery trucks and moving trucks entering and exiting the property do not ever stack on the street waiting for a loading berth to open up. That the dog park be maintained by the property owner. And then some of the other public benefits that we had previously mentioned. When looking at this proposal, we should look at the standards that are required for a plan development. That would be standards for special uses, standards for plan developments, and standards and guidelines for plan developments in the D3 Downtown Core Development District. When Plan Commission members get to that point, then we will be going through, these are the special use standards listed here. Additionally, this is the plan development standard. And then as it relates to the current 2009 downtown plan, we are talking about this area right in here, which is G. That is in what we consider the West Core area, which if you look over here, you can see that the downtown plan calls for a base height of up to 165 feet, and then with bonuses up to 198 feet, if I can see that. So staff does feel that this proposal follows the 2009 downtown plan. And with that, I will turn it back to Chair Lewis.
Okay. Thank you very much. Very nice presentation. So if there's no urgent questions from the commissioners, I'm going to ask the petitioner to make their case.
Thank you, and good evening, Chair Lewis and members of the Plan Commission. My name is Katie Jenke-Dale from the law firm of DLA Piper. We represent Trammell Crow in connection with this application. First, we'd like to thank staff. We spent a lot of time during staff review and during the DAPR meetings. We went back and forth and made a number of changes addressing their concerns. We appreciate their thoughtful staff report. And just to make a note on the record, we've reviewed their recommendations and we agree with all of them. Before I turn it over to Johnny Carlson from Trammell Crow to make the presentation tonight, we do have one request, recognizing that Evanston has a robust public comment process, and there is a chance that we will proceed into another Plan Commission meeting tonight. We would love to hear from you guys tonight as well. If you have any questions, we'd love to solicit those or initial feedback. We'd love to walk out of here tonight with our homework cut out for us. Similar to what we did with staff, we'd love to hear your thoughts and figure out how we can address any questions or feedback we may receive tonight. So with that, I turn it over to Johnny Carlson from Trammell Crow, who will make the presentation along with our project architect. Thank you.
Good evening. Johnny Carlson with Trammell Crow Company. And as always, staff did a great job of preparing this presentation. So I have a bunch of slides that I'll move pretty quickly to find. Melissa, is there a way to flip on the other presentation? While she's doing that, we have a number of members here on our team. Grady Hamilton at Trammell Crow, Mary Lucas at Trammell Crow from our team. Aaron Roseth at ESG Architects, and he'll give you a brief overview of the design. And then we have Lue Abuna at KLOA. and 2 folks from Kimley Horn regarding civil items. So we're here for questions at the end of it, but I wanted to make sure you knew that all of our team members are here this evening. So as Melissa spoke, the site here at Church and Oak, it's a parking lot of an office building that's going to move the parking stalls across the street to a building that they own. That parking lot is only parked with cars from one of their users in the building. It's not for the entire building or for public. It's only for one of the tenants. And that tenant has signed an executed amendment to park their stalls across the street in a building that our office building owner owns and who also is in attendance this evening if any questions come up for that ownership. Trammell Crow, a little bit about our company. We're based here in Chicago, our team. We're one of 16 offices. We're the most active developer in the country. The last few years we've been named Multifamily Developer of the Year. We take pride in all the municipalities we work in. We're extremely excited to be in Evanston. We've been looking for an opportunity to be here, and we're really excited about working with you and trying to become active developer here locally. Here's our team. We're all local. Just wanted to stress that. ESG architect, Aaron Roseth is the president of the firm. He's here. He'll walk you through the design. We've worked on about 10 projects with their firm here locally, and we've found great success. They look at every project differently. They're a great infill urban architect, and we're proud to have them on our team. It's a little bit different use, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time here talking about the use. If you look at the trends of the baby boomer demand and the housing stock out there, we're looking to create a unique housing option that we're calling active adult. This is geared towards a 55-plus age-restricted renter. It's not senior housing and it's not market rate housing. It finds itself right in the middle. The unique comparison of what we offer, it's a rich socialization. Activities director offers a number of planned events per day. It allows residents of Evanston to unlock their home equity, move into a easy transitional life, maintenance-free life, and have a rental option that is not currently in the market. If you look at what we're offering within that, independent living is just on the right of this scale, and senior apartments, which offers no socialization, no activities, no scheduled events, more just apartment geared towards age restricted. We're right in the middle, and that's what we're calling an active adult. As you go up the spectrum here, the rents increase as you go to the right side, and the rents are usually typically lower as you go to the left side of this chart. This shows that we're offering a lot different services than independent living and senior apartments. But in the event that you want to live on site and use a la carte services such as housekeeping, transportation, meals, you can pay for that outside of your rent. But our goal is to deliver a rent that's lower than independent living, but offering a big premium of services to our residents that's slightly more than market rate. How do we compare from a rental rate perspective? On the right, you'll see the 2-bedroom units are in the blue chart. That's independent living. In the middle with the box, that's our rents for the 2-bedroom, for example, in the blue chart. And then to the left is market rate housing. So as you can see, you're paying a premium above market rate housing, but you're paying a discount to independent living facilities. Independent living facilities offer utilities, cleaning, and meals within your rent. So if you back those off, you can see that we're still a discount to those net rents comparison to independent living. And we have plenty of slides. If you want to ask questions, we can flip to that later in the presentation. Why we think we can get this rent premium and what we think we're unique. If you look at this chart here on the left, it's an active adult community, the different amenities, the lobby bistro, salon, massage, kitchen, prep kitchens for catering meals, creating events in the lobby, wine tasting, cheese dinners, all that can be located there, and it's about double the amenities. So if you look at the amenity square footage with outdoor space, it's about 19,000 compared to 10,000 with a market rate option. And if you look at pulling out the outdoor terrace, it's about 14,000 versus 6. So you're getting double the amenity space. People are living in a lower rent check for their unit, but we offer a lot of amenities with activities throughout the building. This is a sample of our partner that has an asset in Denver, in Stapleton. On the bottom right, you'll see a key there that shows if sign-up's required, what's included in your rent, and we also get people together to pay a la carte to go downtown, have a dinner, cooking classes that are outside of the rent. But we really want to stress the importance of typically 4 to 5 planned activities per day in the site, get community in and out of the building, and really unique that is not in Evanston or in the surrounding areas. The site allowances, Melissa did a great job of covering. We just wanted to point out the unit height, front yard setback, and loading berths that are there. The public benefits, we had a little bit more detail here. The reason that we view the on-site versus off-site, our original proposal to staff and to the alderman in our ward was to pay fee in lieu. 17 units are required. We were told to go back to the drawing table, work with the community. We heard loud and clear that it was more important to put the affordable units on site versus pay a fee in lieu. So that comparison of $3.5 million is what the hit to the pro forma was to put the burden on site versus pay the fee in lieu. I think the big reason why fee in lieu is viewed less by staff and the alderman was to deliver this type of unit to the senior demographic is a lot more than $100,000 per unit. So that's really what drove us to. So we reworked our program, hit the AMIs that was required at 50% of those units being at 50 and 60, and we view that as probably the most important one on this list, and everything else Melissa covered. With that, Aaron Roseth at ESG Architects is going to come up and walk you through a quick plan, but I think the points I wanted to make before I leave is we worked with DAPR to relocate a lot of the streetscape loading, public realm safety within those community comments. So the big point here, the changes in the plans, we're moving the loading dock, creating a safer environment from turning radiuses. The existing curb cuts are 2 on site. We're going to 1 curb cut, so that should also improve the pedestrian realm and safety. We actually are adding 2 stalls to Oak Avenue from current situations, so we're going to move a fire hydrant, pay that, create 2 additional stalls as public benefit, and the affordable component, and lastly, the bird-friendly measures that we're working with. So with that, thank you very much, and we really appreciate your time this evening and look forward to some of your feedback.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Aaron Roseth, and I'm excited to be here tonight. You have a beautiful community, and we take a lot of pride in the different communities that we do work in because doing urban infill isn't a very easy thing to do. It's very important to have very strong design principles. We're very proud of the work we've done with Trammell Crow so far, and believe that if you've looked at any of our past projects, we've been able to be very successful going into rich communities like your own. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, and then obviously our entire team is here for questions. And so on the ground floor, just to point out a few things that Johnny had mentioned, going from a couple of curb cuts to the single did a lot of positive things for the project. We added additional parking on the street, and it also eliminated another curb cut with maneuvering for loading, which we used to have on the north side. So all of the loading and all of the traffic coming into the site is done with the 1 curb cut to the south. So the loading berth is in the immediate left-hand side as you drive into off of Oak. And then the parking garage would be there's some stalls on the first level, and then there's 2 levels of parking above this. But on Oak itself, between the trees and the streetscape and the dimension we have on the sidewalk, that's all active use. So the staff had stressed that. That's also one of the design principles that's very important to us as well, to maintain a very active presence on the street. So this is the typical floor plate for the 2nd and 3rd level with the parking garage. And then as the podium steps in, where the mid-rise portion of the building goes up, this is the typical floor plan of the housing units. And then on the top level, we have an amenity area and a pool looking toward Chicago. And these types of sites, these triangular sites, are very exciting for architects anyway. I think that it certainly presents some challenges in terms of efficiencies, but we love playing off of how the grid is interrupted by the train line. And it certainly opened up different really amazing view corridors towards Chicago, towards Lake Michigan. Our approach for the overall design was that after the podium, that the mid-rise portion would have a playful exterior to it, where there wasn't a sort of rigid way of presenting each of the facades. That there was sort of a dynamic play of the window fenestration and the balconies around the building. So this is a streetscape perspective looking towards the building. As we get closer up, you'll see more detail on the building. The primary materials are metal panel, lots of glazing, and a few details of Abet laminati, or a specialty material. This was a very important thing for us. This is a perforated metal panel that skins the exterior of the podium or the garage portion. We've liked this material on other buildings that we've done because it's very playful with the sun and the changing colors of the environment. And we thought that cladding it that way would be a really cool thing. We do have a material palette here that we can pass around as well, so you can see some of these materials closer up. There is one of the public amenities, both for the public and the residents of this building, is a dog park. We work carefully with a bird coalition that to better understand how we can improve the safety of birds. And the facade one area is the primary concern. And so we've taken into consideration all the materials that mitigate the type of bird collisions. One of those is on that zone 1 to have fritted glass and breaking up the glass proportions of continuous materials. So it's broken up so it doesn't look like one mirrored panel. These are the typical elevations. One thing to point out, these are the garage doors that are proposed that are both glass and metal. The engineers and consultants are here for questions, but we did all the turning movements and are very comfortable with the way that the approach for loading would happen. One thing to point out with height, and just for the record as well, as our design team is working to better understand our next step, hopefully, in terms of production of our drawings and the development of this project, we understand that a means of egress needs to go to the top portion of a roof in Evanston, which is a little bit nuanced condition. And so the 176-foot height with that stairwell that would go to the top of the roof would be an additional 12 feet. But that would not be for any active use whatsoever. It would literally be for maintenance of that roof. We have metrics if you have any specific questions. This is also in your package. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Johnny.
And that is all we have, so we're here for questions, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, it's the time when members of the public can ask questions of the petitioner. Just a second, please. So I'm going to ask if there's anyone who is requesting a continuance for this at this time. I think you were the first one. If you can state your name and address.
My name is Frank Montagna. I live in 1720 Oak, Unit 506.
Okay.
I submitted a written continuance yesterday to Ms. Jones. Basically, we're asking for, I'm representing many of the residents here at from 1720 Oak, this Sienna development. In polling the residents, not many actually were aware of this development. There was quite a bit of confusion between this development and the development that is going to the north of us. And given the density of the people that will be moving into these units and the traffic and whatnot, people have a lot of concerns. So we'd like to request a continuance so we can gather more data for that.
Oh, okay, so do you have a copy of your
Yes, I do.
of your request?
I do.
You can, please. Thank you very much. All right, it's been pointed out to me that I have forgotten to swear people in. So if you're going to testify today, I'd like you to raise your right hand and swear that you will tell the truth. Will you tell the truth? Yes. Great, thank you. All right, so we have...
I have told the truth.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you for confirming that. All right. So I guess this request by Mr. Frank Montagna is entered into the record. All right. Shall I give that to you, Melissa? Okay. All right. So I think it's best that I explain a little bit of the ground rules right now. We are first going to ask questions. We can ask questions that will probably help you to better understand the process. And then we would at that point, we have a choice of either going forward with statements by the public or stopping the process at that time. If you make a statement tonight, then you will not be able to make a statement after the continuance on the rehearing. So. I have a question as a point of order. I'm going to recognize the commission member, and then I'll recognize you. Okay.
Commissioner Lewis, I wanted to know whether the commissioners would have a chance to ask questions tonight.
Well, it's been requested by the petitioner that we get a chance to ask questions. So I'm going to give that opportunity, so they'll be able to provide more feedback to us and to the public. So I think it's to everyone's benefit that they get as much information as they can.
Thank you.
So, sir? Can you please come up to the, I know it's a long hike, and please state your name.
Thank you. My name is Philip Criffield. I am an owner of a unit at Sienna at 1720 Oak. We have, and I know there are other owners here who wish to make a petition for a continuance. And is it necessary for us to make that request in order to be able to speak at the next meeting?
So the petition has already been made for the continuance. So as a matter of order, should we grant the continuance and go on, or
there was lack of clarity as to whether or not individuals on an individual basis needed to make requests for continuance as opposed to a blanket.
The continuance is a blanket
and
for everyone.
Therefore, without prejudice for the all owners and others to speak at the next meeting who don't speak tonight. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's all I need.
Commissioner Halleck.
I just have a quick question on the continuance. Do we have more information on the reason for the continuance? Like what the gentleman that came up mentioned more data. Like what data is not available right now that would be gotten from the continuance?
I made a Freedom of Information Act request for parking studies. for traffic studies? There's,
Yes, I'm sorry. You're not recognized at this point. We're
I'm sorry.
Addressing Commissioner Halleck. The ordinance doesn't state why that they have to provide that kind of backup. It's the right of anyone, any property owner within 1,000 feet of the. Okay, so. All right, so should we make the motion now, do you think, or should we, and then go to questioning?
If it sounds like the commission would like to ask questions of the petitioner, and if it may be best to do that first, and then to also give the opportunity for anyone who's here tonight from the public and would like to speak tonight. And once that's concluded, would probably be the best time to entertain a motion for a continuance.
All right, so.
I thought we had opportunity, you said, to ask questions.
Yep.
Before we made, so I have a question.
Well, we're going to get to the public questions right now. All right. So we're going to we'll do the public questions by show of hand. So who would like to make a statement? Questions. I'm sorry. Yes. Please come to the podium.
Thank you. A number of us were at a meeting with.
Can you please state your?
My name is Gary Johnson.
Okay, and your address.
1720 Oak Avenue.
Very good. Thank you.
And a number of us were at a meeting with Alderman Braithwaite last week, and we heard Alderman Braithwaite request Mr. Magnum to provide a new traffic study, and we heard Mr. Magnum say he would provide a new traffic study. My question is, have you provided that new traffic study?
Yes, thank you. So the question had to do with traffic safety on the Oak and Clark bend there in that intersection. So we have requested accident data from the last 3 years from the police department.
So is that available yet?
It's not fully available. We've got aggregate amount of data. However, they're looking to dissect that a little bit to find out what data is on the public right-of-way versus on private property.
May I ask when that is going to become available in relation to when decisions are made here?
Yeah, I would certainly anticipate that it would be available prior to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, please.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Criffield. I live at 1740 Oak Avenue, and I have a question for the petitioner tonight. If the proposed dog park is planned to be considered open to the public as a public benefit, how will Trammell Crow or whomever is operating the property at the time ensure that dogs are properly licensed and have the adequate rabies, distemper, leptospirosis, parvovirus vaccines that are required by the City of Evanston for off-leash dog facilities?
Do you want us to answer them one by one?
I think if that's easier for you, I think that's you could either choose to answer them all in aggregate or do them.
List and see if they have the same
Take-
question, and we'll answer them all at the end if that works.
I think that's the way we're going to do it. Okay. So it gives them a chance to be more comprehensive in their questions. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Please.
My name is Barbara Puda, and I live at 1720 Maple. I have some questions about green. I see a green space on the plan, but I haven't seen, and perhaps it's available, and I just haven't looked in the right place, what that will mean. Is that green asphalt? Is that green grass? What green is that? And then the next question I have is with regard to the trees that run along the tracks, not on the railroad's right-of-way, but on the west side of that embankment. I see on the schematics, a lot of green back there, and currently there is. I counted about somewhere between 17 and 20 trees. They're not just scrub trees. There are some very nice pine trees back there. And I imagine there are a number of birds and probably other kinds of critters who use that as home space. I know that information has been provided about the streetscape trees, but I haven't seen anything about all those trees that I assume are going to be removed on the railroad side of the building, and what public benefit there might be to requiring the developer, if those trees can't be replaced on premises because of the very small setbacks, making trees available elsewhere in Evanston to make up for the, as I said, 17 to 20 that I've counted that don't appear to me are going to show up after the property is developed.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify, you're asking for clarification on what kind of landscaping and green space at the ground level is provided as part of the development?
I've seen the landscape plan. What I haven't seen is any landscape plan for that area of trees that are, it appears to me, bound to be removed.
All right.
Right
All right.
next to the railroad embankment.
Thank you. All right, please.
Hi, my name is Debbie Wall. I live in 1740 Oak, and part of my issue with the building being approved is that I look right over the railroad tracks, and my balcony goes like right as you see the Metro Pass. You can see my best friend's building and the striped sweater there, Jenny Matola's, and it's going to block all the sunlight from my building, meaning there will be no sunlight. And the other issue is it will be blocking.
Yeah, I think, yes, exactly. So we need this to be a question and not a statement. Statements will be taken later, all right?
Okay.
So can you
the
form a
question I have is, we just got a letter last weekend about it, and we heard nothing else. That's my question of how we didn't find out beforehand.
So you're asking, were the procedures for public notification followed? Is that?
That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
And we just got a letter,
All right.
like literally this weekend.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Since Mr. Montagne has already done it, and I think you raised your hand, please, first. Then we'll get to you. And okay.
Hi, I'm Kurt Schaefer, 1740 Oak. My question, I suppose, is primarily for the architect or for the structural engineers. What I'm wondering is why it's necessary for the second and third floors of this building to come all the way within a foot of the lot line and to be just a blank wall. What requires that? Because none of the other residential buildings in the area have that. 1100 Church, our development, the Sienna, 1717 Ridge, which was just built very recently and was in fact a very profitable building, they all managed to do without that. And so I'm wondering why it's necessary for your building to have that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions. Name's Lou Booker. I live at 2022 Lake in Evanston. I wanted to know what was going to happen to the, I've attended like funerals and weddings at the Mount Zion Church there, which is immediate next door neighbor. So I was wondering about the street parking between, with the meters, between Ridge and Church. You probably did address it and I just didn't hear it, but I was wondering if there's going to be less parking and what's going to happen, or will there still be as many parking meters as there are now?
All right.
And I was wondering when the project is going to start for the independent senior living there. And I was wondering if anybody from Tamil Crow contacted or had meetings with any of the representatives of the church to hear their concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Please. Is it possible that we have a microphone that? Yeah. We've got a microphone that you can use, and and only because the camera can see you, if you could get near the podium. This is on, I think.
I'm Mary Jo Criffield. I live at 1720 Oak. My question's for the developer. How many staff members are you planning to hire in this new development?
Okay. Thank you very much. I think Mr. Montagna had.
Oh, I was raising.
Okay, very good. So, please.
Good evening. My name is Claire Kelly, and I'd like to know what outreach. Certainly, I'm sure Trammell Crow, as well as Peter Braithwaite's, fully aware that there are a good number of residents associated with disabled residents associated with the Center for Independent Futures living across the street. So I'd like to know what outreach has been done from Trammell Crow and Peter Braithwaite to sit down and hear concerns, and if so, on what dates did you do that outreach? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Please, sir.
Bob Jenkins, 1210 Church. Just a few questions. One is the allowance for only one loading. What are the justifications for that, and how can it be assured that over the decades that there won't be congestion there with one truck waiting for another? Second one is it possible to provide square feet averages for the one bedrooms and the two bedrooms and that, and number of bathrooms, just to get an idea what these units are like a little bit more, although I guess probably the pictures will make some of that clear. That's better.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so. Oh, please. Just shout out and say, hey, you, if you.
I'm Sue Walton. I live at 1111 Church Street condos, of where I am the rules chair. I have seen Sienna come, and I've bought Sienna. My question to you is, and to the developer, there is a one-way westbound alley between Sienna and the block where my building is. What do you anticipate the traffic flow to be, and how will you deal with that during construction and move-ins and move-outs?
Okay, thank you very much. Is anyone else? No hands? All right, very good. So I think at this point I am going to go to ask if the commissioners have any questions at this point to add. Commissioner Pagozzi.
Yeah, two questions. If you could explain to me how trash is being managed, where you're going to house the dumpster full time, how, just sequence of operation, so that I'm concerned that a dumpster is going to take up the loading bay area. And then secondly, has there been any issue with, first of all, yesterday was my birthday, and I still don't qualify to move into this building, and I feel kind of good about that.
You're lucky.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Thank you. Anyway, I was just curious if in buildings such as these, if some of the residents have caregivers, and if there is ever an issue with caregiver parking on a daily basis. And those were my two questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Isaac.
Excuse me. I have a number of questions about parking, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to verbalize them all without getting a few responses, so I may have some follow-ups on them. But we have 1007 Church, which is, and this development is basically taking out the 45 space parking lot for that property. I see the zoning analysis says that this property has or is required to have roughly 300 parking spaces, and it looks like that calculation was done on a 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet of floor area. My question for staff is whether the 2 per 1,000 square foot of floor area is appropriate, given that the use appears to be medical, at least for a large portion of the building, and whether that should be 5 spaces per 1,000. My next question is which is probably also for staff, is with respect to Sienna Court or the Sienna development. It appears that the office, the 1007, is using parking from that development. I believe that development was a PD, and there was parking required for that. There's a certain number of spaces required for that development. And if that parking, well, I don't know what the requirements were from the PD, so I'd like to know what the requirements were from that PD for the Sienna development, and if spaces are currently being used by 1007 Church that should otherwise be used for Sienna or part of their zoning requirements. Are we sort of borrowing back and forth and making Sienna non-compliant with their PD by allowing 1007 to claim the parking from Sienna? I don't know whether that's accurate in any way, but I think we need more information to find out if that's an issue. And then to the extent that 1007 is using Sienna's parking, I think we need to have more information on what the relationship is between the Sienna parking spaces and 1007, if that's a long-term relationship, and how long-term it is, considering that we're allowing 1007 to make up its parking by using the spaces across the street. So, sorry for the long-winded question, but...
So since that question is not directed at the petitioner per se, I want to give staff an opportunity, if they can take it, to address it, since it's fairly complicated issue with the three.
Sorry. There might be some other questions for staff, so I was just curious. I wanted to see if we could just get through all the questions and then have people answer.
Sure.
I know I have a question for staff.
Okay. Commissioner Goddard, I think, put hers on first.
Yeah, I have just a question about the site of the parking lot. Has this always been a parking lot? And my ultimate question is there likely to be any contamination below street level? And if so, what are the plans to eradicate that?
All right, Commissioner Saul.
Just have a few questions. Regarding one of the public benefits, the transit tracker, I was just curious if that was available to the public. I think they stated it was in the lobby of the building, or just for the residents. And also, if there was any thought given to improving the crosswalk mid-block between, once you pass Church going north. I drive that street every day, and that crosswalk, there's very little indication to know that people will be crossing the street, so I think that's problematic. So I wanted to know if the developer or staff had considered that. And then this is a question for staff. If the traffic study that's typically done, I think it was said a year after the development is built, if it could be tied to occupancy of the building versus time. So when the building is 90% full, so we know that the building is being fully used before we look at the traffic implications.
All right, now that is Commissioner Dubin.
My question is probably for staff. One, how does this, I know the dog beach washed away this year, but how did the city control the health of the dogs using the dog beach? And two, again, that intersection, that's a curve onto Clark Street. Has any thought been given by the city to making that a controlled intersection? Stop signs, not necessarily a stoplight.
Is that Commissioner Saul again?
Sorry,
Well,
my
you're-
light for me isn't working, so I can't tell if it's on.
Okay, all right, very good, very good. Commissioner Halleck, you're the one who hasn't said anything. Nothing? No other questions? I just have one. I'm wondering if there has been any site or shadow studies done for the project, and I guess that is to address concerns about casting of shadows. So, all right. So are there any, I'll give one, okay, Commissioner Alec.
And this is because I'm a new member here. Does our purview include the the aesthetics of the exterior of the building?
Well, you can certainly ask questions about the aesthetics of the building.
Well, I'd just like the architect to explain a little bit more about the, I forget what the concept of playful, and how that relates to the tradition of architecture in Evanston.
Okay. All right, one more question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Irv Chopel. I have two questions about how they define what is an active adult and what are the age restrictions.
Very good. All right. So we'll give you your chance to answer those questions. It's quite a long list. So
I'm going to do my best to keep them coherent and keep people going from popping up and back. But before I begin, does staff want to, I defer to staff if they want to answer the questions directed to them first, or
you
do you want
I
us
would
to go
like you
ahead?
to, because
Okay.
some of them might overlap
Okay,
a little bit.
absolutely.
I would like you to go for it, and then
Yep.
we'll give staff
Okay.
a chance to fill in
Absolutely.
the
So, again, for the record, Katie Jinky Dale, a couple initial things that even the lawyer can answer, or not even the lawyer, but the Lilly lawyer can answer. As far as process notice, we worked with staff. We used the city's notice mailing system. We had two different community meetings. One, the notice was sent out a little bit late, so we had a follow-up one. With the notice well in advance. We also attended Ward Night, hosted by Alderman Braithwaite last week. At that meeting, it's correct that the Alderman asked us if we would meet with some of the area buildings. That was just a week ago, but we're willing to have those meetings and have those set up. So we're happy to talk to any neighbors, any buildings. We've been working through the Alderman, but we're here tonight and happy to set up any additional outreach. As far as the dog parks and licensing, echoing Commissioner Dubin's question, we would love to learn what the city does. It will likely be a condition in residents' leases, or it will be a condition in residents' leases that their dogs are legal in whatever way is required in Evanston. But given that the dog park is a public amenity and open to the public, will also have signage. And if there are issues with unlicensed dogs, then we would work with the city and whoever enforces dog safety in the city. With that, I'm going to ask. We'll start with Kimberly Horn is going to talk about the questions about the green space and tree preservation that were started at the beginning.
Very good.
Hello, my name's Tom Runkle. I'm a landscape architect with Kimley Horn. And first I'll address the question about the grade level landscape. I believe there's a, figure out the pointer on this thing. There we go. So the main components of the grade level landscape consist of a row of 20 new street trees in tree grates along the front end of parking along Oak. We'll also have some trees in these landscape bump outs here. Underneath those trees in those bump outs will be a mixture of shrubs, perennials, ornamental grasses, lower level landscape like that. And then there's also a landscape island up here where we have some plantable space to enhance the streetscape. The dog park area, the actual surface of the dog park, we need it to be something that's durable, permeable, as well as wheelchair accessible. So right now the thought is that it'd be something like a decomposed granite or a pea rock, something like that. Surrounding the dog park would be your typical turf grass. Along the southern property line, there's a plantable space there, and actually one of the concerns from the neighbors to the south is that we create some sort of vegetative screen within that space. So what we're intending to do there is plant some shade-tolerant, narrow, tall, upright columnar trees, as well as some taller shrubs and perennials in front. And then this area back here is plantable space as well, and it will become turf grass as well as evergreen trees filling that space. From a tree removal standpoint, the trees that were referred to are along this property line here. There are a number of trees there. Scotch pines, white pines, there's a linden, a ginkgo, so there is a variety back there, all in different states of health. With the way the site's being developed for a variety of construction-related reasons, excavation, grading, utility installation, all those trees will be removed. Evanston does have a tree preservation and removal ordinance that we will comply with. It states any tree, we have to do a survey of species, size, conditional assessment, and any tree that isn't dead or in a state of health that it poses a risk to the community, it must be replaced based on there's an equation based on the type of species, the size, and if we are not able to provide the required quantity of replacement trees on site, then Evanston allows a fee in lieu of $150 for every caliper inch that we're deficient.
Okay.
So.
I would like to clarify one of the answers given before, previously from the attorney.
I think we're going to let them go through the whole purpose of asking all the questions at one point, and then I'll come back for a clarification if you want to. I think we're going to let them go through.
All right, so next, we're going to have the architect come up and talk about the setbacks, as well as the building design questions.
One of the questions was why we have the perimeter the way that it is on the second and third level. We are compliant on all sides except the west side, just a point of clarification. And the reason that we aren't on the west side is the circulation path. I talked earlier about the unique nature of the site, the triangular shape, which we think is really interesting, and one of the drawbacks of that shape is that you don't get a very efficient parking your stalls per gross square feet increase because of that shape. And so the circulation is what drove that west side and our ask for a little bit of relief. And so that's the response for that question. The other was the response of how does the playfulness, as I described it, in the architecture relate to the bigger context of Evanston. I think one of the richest things about Evanston is there isn't one architectural vocabulary. I think the adjacent building to us is a world-famous architect. There is certainly the traditional architecture throughout the campus. There's also some very contemporary architecture throughout the campus. I think our approach early on working with staff was we actually came in with a more traditional looking building. And the suggestion early on from feedback that we had from staff and early discussions with in our presentations with the neighborhood is that we would go more contemporary. And so what I meant by playful isn't a wild number of colors or materials on the building. I think that the material palette is very restrained. What I meant by playful is that there isn't a rigid sort of vocabulary of straight lines everywhere. We felt that the irregularity of the fenestration on each of the facades, where there's a shift in the way balconies existed and a shift in the way windows existed along the fenestration as you move up the building, was a very fun, dynamic way of looking at a very restrained material palette with a more dynamic expression of those materials. So that was our approach. We're very happy with the way that it is being delivered. The other portion of the building, the way that the garage is skinned, again, is a very it's a single material that has a slight different tone-on-tone color to it, and it's really dynamic with sunlight and the different colors of the sky as it kind of re-represents itself against that material. So that was our approach.
Right.
Next, we're going to have Louis Abuno from KLOA talk about the alley and some of the crosswalks in the area.
Thank you, Katie. Louis Abuna with KLOA. So KLOA did complete a traffic study for the proposed development, and I believe the report has been posted on the city's website, so it's available for the public to review. As far as the alleys in the area, we're not impacting them. We're not changing the orientation of the alleys, making one-way, two-way, or vice versa. So the alleyway system will stay the way it is. Regarding the question of the mid-block crosswalk, we will be restriping it, so we'll be refreshing the crosswalk so it's more visible. We're not proposing any additional changes at this point. With the city's post-occupancy study, we can certainly take a look at that time and see if there would be any additional changes in terms of signage or advanced warning signs needed. I might add that the crosswalks at the intersection of Church and Oak will be upgraded to have countdown timers, and that's being done as part of the 1815 Ridge development. This development will upgrade the crosswalk and the countdown timers at the intersection of Ridge and Church. So all of these will obviously enhance the pedestrian safety as people are crossing these intersections. Thank you.
So there are several questions regarding how the parking works and how the trash works, and are you going to?
I'll answer that.
All right, perfect.
All right, so I'm going to do my best to kind of capture the remaining items. So we'll follow up, and Katie's making a tabulation here and checking the boxes as we go. So I'll start with my list. The metered cars, we've spoken with staff on Oak. Each stall has individual meters on that street. As part of this redevelopment, those meters will be taken down in a meter box that's not listed on the public benefit. We're going to be paying for that street is to include that. You've seen it other parts of the area of Evanston and in the city. So that'll be part of an infrastructure improvement along there. So I think that was one of the questions in the stall count I mentioned previously. There's going to be 2 additional stalls added to the street, and also 2 ADA stalls within that additional. So currently there's no ADA metered stalls. Those will be close proximity to the office building straddling our entrance. So that's the first one. Project start, anticipating or hopeful if everything goes as planned, we would be looking for a summer start of this year, 2018. And it's typically about an 18-month to 19-month construction period. And we view that, to your question, about when we'll be full and we're open to that, as the constraint of the traffic study would be typically 18 months beyond that period of time. So we can trigger it off occupancy, and we're open to that. Moving on, staff members. There'll be 6 full-time staff members on site. In addition to that, there'll be 2 coming and going at different times. If there's a yoga instructor, if there's someone teaching a class, health class, whatever it is, those would be 2 additional. Those 6 plus 2 won't all be there at the exact same time. So that's why I say 6 full-time, and then the 2 will be kind of float back and forth depending on the activities per day. Not all of it will occur at one time. Loading. This is interesting. We've never included 2 loading docks in any of our projects. This is a unique housing type even beyond that. So even with market rate, if you're on an alley, sometimes you can satisfy that, so you don't need to ask for the allowance. But for our demand, our retention on these units, it's age restricted. There's not a lot of moving in and moving out. Usually the retention is a lot stronger. So the 1 loading dock will handle our scheduled move-ins, which will occur very few because we see 1 or 2 people moving out per month once you move in. And furthermore, everything's scheduled with our on-site staff, so there will be no move-in schedule when trash pickup, et cetera, will be occurring, and we'll manage that and make sure all of our vendors are aware of that with any contract that we sign. So that's regarding the loading. In addition to that, obviously, there's other stalls in the perimeter of the building. If it's a small van delivering food, et cetera, would be a traditional size, but that load-in is for a box truck that would be maneuvering in our site entirely. No reversing out through the streetscape. Pedestrian realm would be all within our site and taking a left out or right out of our site going forward. Jumping over to the next list, trash, the sequence, the trash room is located by the loading dock. There's extra space within the loading dock area, so that would be wheeled out on trash day, depending on when the pickups are handled. The car would pull up, trash would be picked up, and the bin would be wheeled back in. This would be a compactor building, so there'd be less demand, less pickups, less frequent, because we would compact it and have less deliveries and trash pickup. Caregivers, this age is active adults, so unless there's a life change, most of these people are not having caregivers. If they are, they'd typically be living in a continuum of care community. Our average age is 72, even though it's 55 plus. So we set the age restriction for fair housing. That question was asked previously, but our average age is 72, and that is why we don't envision caregivers. If there's a life event in someone or a disability that they have, this exact community won't address that. They'll either live here with some sort of care, or they'll probably make a change to go to a facility that would cater to their needs specifically. We don't restrict anything, obviously. We'll work with the community to deliver the right ADA. All the units are ADA compliant, code compliant. We go through a number of variations with just grab bars in the showers, et cetera, just for precautionary reasons that people need them for short term, but not for whatever they need at various times. We're there to help our residents. Going down the next list, contamination. One of the conditions, I believe, in the staff report was, in the event we encounter it, we'll deal with Environmental Protection Agency to handle that waste to go off-site. We've conducted a phase 1 and phase 2, and we believe that there's nothing in there that's any different than any other site that we're typically see in Evanston or the city, but we'll follow the precautions of the code. Jumping over to the public tracker, I think it's a great idea. The staff, we've actually never included one of these in our development. In the past, staff requested it, so we are open to where we put it if it's visible by both patrons inside the building or outside, but we'll work with staff to incorporate that if that's an important comment. Traffic, I already answered that we're fine with having it be the look back once we're full, and we'll provide that in writing when we achieve that status. Health of the dog park, I think that was for staff, so I'll let the staff come back to that. And the shadow study, we've looked at that. We will provide that the next meeting. And the active adult, what is it? Active adult, I went through this slide. It's someone who wants to live in a rich social environment and have a less alternative rent check to independent living. They're there for socialization. They're there for activities. They're there for luxury living, stay in the community, not leave the community, be by religious affiliations, friends, children, grandchildren in the area. And they don't want to move and don't want to leave. And right now there's no housing stock straddling the difference of market rate housing to independent living. And that's what we're here to offer. Looking at any of the other questions, I think sizes of units, it's about 68% one bedroom or smaller, and about 32% two bedrooms. The ranges in size, the studios, you can call them studios, alcoves, however you want to look at it, is 569 approximately. That'll be subject to minor modification as the plans evolve. We have 26 of those. We have 3 different sizes of one bedrooms. 15% are small, about 650 average. About 23% are about 730 square feet. And 26 of those, 15%, are about 764. So there's a small, medium, and large. We've found that this demographic's basically single occupancy typically, so smaller units are better, and that's why the alderman and staff drove us to get everything on site. They're okay with the one-bedroom units and studio units being interchangeable because it's primarily single occupancy, even of the two-bedroom units for market rate or affordable housing. The two-bedroom units are 953, which equates to about 8% on the small end. The medium-sized twos are about 1150 square feet, which is about 15%, and the last remainder are kind of the corner unit, two-bedroom, high-end units that are about 1,250 square feet. So average unit size, approximately 818, 169 units, and we view that our market study that we've submitted to staff, this use, there's an extreme amount of demand for the next few years of this product type, in addition, after we're delivered, to satisfy this growing demand. Our partner, the Carlyle Group, is a large holder of this real estate, large owner, large developer. They're following trends. If you look at the demographics, the desire, the need, this is main and main throughout the country for where we want to deliver that, and that's why we think this use is very unique. I think with that is all I have, but I'm...
Well, okay, I think there was one request to talk about construction traffic and how that would affect the alleys and the local.
Yep.
Local.
I'll hit on it, and Louie will come up about the construction traffic, but we, as part of our condition, have to work on a construction management plan as a condition to pulling a building permit. We're going to hire a first-class general contractor that's built in the area, knows the area. We need to be good neighbors. We view every project as we're going to be your neighbor for the ongoing future, so we're going to try to do our best to maintain all the construction logistics, signage, wayfinding during those construction periods. And Louie can talk a little bit about just the alley that was referenced. If these trucks are there, they're coming to and from the site every day. They know where it is. They're not looking to an area to find it. And if we're having big deliveries certain days, we'll have people on site directing traffic into an on-site gate. So all the activity will be within the right-of-way or on our site. Our goal is to not impact any flow of traffic running north and south on Oak. And if it is, it's going to be short-term for the duration of the project. So with that, Louie, I don't know if you want to add anything, but he's saying he's good.
He's good?
Yeah.
So there was also a question, I don't know if you want to address this, but about the history of the site. Is that better for staff, or are you able to provide some information?
Yeah, there was a building there on the parking lot way back. It housed, I believe, lime and grain or different sorts. There actually was an old rail spur that came into the site. So the history goes way back. Most recently, it's obviously a parking lot for the office building. A little bit of the history on this site and the parking, the owner is here. FD Stonewater is the owner. They purchased this building. They also, by purchasing that, they bought fee simple ownership of a parking lot across the street that's in the building that we're referencing. So those two go hand in hand. That parking is part of the approvals of their office building being code compliant for their parking. I believe staff, and Melissa can confirm this, that analysis was done by them reducing the stalls on our parking lot that we're buying still allows them to be code compliant under the plan development. And the medical use is for one user. They actually don't even need as much parking because it hasn't been heavily burdened. If you go there at any various times throughout the day, there's plenty of stalls. These are by appointment only typically. And that's why it's a unique use that the tenant was obviously satisfied with taking less parking across the street. They're also providing wayfinding signage as you go through this here. part of the crosswalk improvements, we're going to be improving that crosswalk. We're signing it. Every visitor who's coming to make an appointment will be told where to park. It'll be a transition period. They've already made the transition. The parking lot is vacated. The amendment's signed. There's no one parking in the parking lot right now. Once you pull into the garage, there'll be parking signs only. They have ownership just like the condo building. They have rights to that stall, so they can dedicate those stalls however they want. And then each parking stall will be located with North Shore parking. So I think that hopefully satisfies, and I'm here if you have any other questions that Melissa or I can answer. Thank you.
All right. I think it's staff. Are you able to address some of the questions that were pointed out?
If you want, Chair, I could take a stab at a couple of the questions, and then Ms. Klotz may have some additional answers. Regarding the dog beach that the city has, there are permits required for that, a permit pass required for the dog beach. There are requirements in order to purchase a pass from the city, including proof of vaccinations, proof of a pet license, and a signage of a liability waiver. So that is regarding the city's dog beach. I believe there's also questions this year about the water levels and whether the dog beach will be open, but that's a separate matter. Regarding the question about whether a controlled intersection would be considered at Oak and Clark, the plans have been reviewed by our Public Works Agency and traffic engineers. We have not had that as a recommendation that's come up. In this interim period, we could follow up with them and just see if that's something they've looked at. But that's something we've not heard at this time. Regarding the traffic study, I think we'd certainly be open to amending the condition about at what point the sort of post-approval, if there's an approval, traffic study would occur, and doing that at a different time period or a time period, if there's a minimum occupancy level at that time. Regarding the parking questions, let's see if Melissa has any answers today. Otherwise, we can certainly follow up if the hearing is continued.
Regarding the parking for the 1007 Church building, originally that building was required to have 245 parking spaces, and then in 1998 there was a request to add more parking to allow for a medical office use. That request needed to add at least 49 additional parking spaces, which brought the requirement up to 294 spaces. At that point, the development had significantly more spaces than necessary. They had 345. So now once you subtract off the 45 surface parking spaces that will be lost due to this development, 1007 Church is still compliant with a total of 300 spaces where 294 are required. And that was built into the Sienna plan development, noted specifically for the 1007 Church building. And those spaces do not count as parking for the Sienna development.
All right.
My question was not answered.
All right.
About the green roof? The composition of the green roof?
All right.
Sure, let me back up to the slide. That's probably the best perspective of it. So the green roof on the top of the third floor is going to be an extensive system, which means it's approximately 4 inches deep, 4-inch depth of lightweight soil mix, and planted on top of that will be shallow-rooted, hardy, drought-tolerant plants, low-profile, typically things like sedums.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this point, I think we've completed the presentations and questions phase, and there has been a request for a continuance. That continuance would be granted to a date certain. I believe staff is proposing a specific date for that.
April 11th is the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Plan Commission, and that's a date that we'd recommend.
All right, so
I'd like to make a point of correction where the answer is given by the developer.
I think that's more appropriate for a statement that's not a question. This is the question and fact-finding period. So if there's a correction, I would like to address it later.
As a point of fact, I have a correction to one of the statements that was made by the developer. Fact for the record.
All right. So I'm going to say that there is we can proceed with making public statements today. So your statement of fact would be at that point. But I must say that if you want to make a public statement tonight, you will not be able to make it at the continuance. All right. Is there anyone who would like to make any public statements today? Please, sir.
Hello, I'm Gary Johnson. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, all of us in the neighborhood understand that at some point this property will be developed. It's the right thing for Evanston someday. It's part of the plan. The question is, should it be this development? And we very strongly believe no. It's already a place where there is a lot of congestion and increasing amounts of traffic. We've heard it from your side of the table that around that corner, it's already very difficult. I think of that corner and the street as the way people seem to treat it is like an exit ramp from Ridge. People come whipping around, and then they have these deer in headlight moments at that crosswalk. And I've been caught there many times myself, where all of a sudden there's a car accelerating as it comes off of Ridge, and it's already very dangerous. Now, this proposal is going to add to that congestion. So that's why we're so concerned. We've heard a lot about the active adults. We've heard a lot about the people who would be served there with their wine tasting and their spa amenities and so forth. You need to know a little more about the people on the other side of the street. Sienna As you heard briefly, Sienna was originally marketed for people with disabilities. And there are quite a few people with developmental disabilities, physical disabilities. This isn't a passing moment. This is the way it was marketed from the start. And our neighbors who are in the disability community are a permanent part of our community. They've been very, very steady in their ownership. They have services there, so forth. If I'm worried crossing the street the way it is now, they're doubly, triply worried. So I ask you to consider all of us, but including and especially them. And finally, I would like to make one request. And I'm not taking away from the thought that this is the wrong proposal. I believe it from the bottom of my heart, it is the wrong proposal if you examine the facts. But if it happens that you endorse this proposal, please do not grant all these special allowances that they are asking for. Each and every one of those that you've heard, height, number of units, each and every one of those adds to the congestion. Please do not turn your back on the community. Thank you.
So are there any others, please? Would it be more comfortable to use a handheld mic, or so you don't? Okay.
Hi, my name is Mary Jo Griffield again, and I live at 1720 Oak Avenue in the Sienna condos, across the street from the proposed 1727 development. which it will be double the height of Sienna, an 8-story building. I'm a lifelong Evanstonian. I've moved back here in 2006 from graduating from the U of I, and I moved into my condo after considering numerous other developments in the downtown area. I chose this location, though, because it was less congested and it offered plenty of street parking for my caregivers, my nurses, and all my home medical staff. It's important to note that there is also a large community of 20 young adults living in Sienna with physical and developmental disabilities, many of whom also require outside help from caregivers, etc. The addition of 2 new tower developments within a half block of our neighborhood, with only partial parking provided for residents and possibly as many as 100 employees at 1815 Ridge development, will create severe parking shortage on Oak Avenue. The additional 2 parking spaces really wouldn't help us at all. Available parking is critical for Sienna residents, guests, and the new law firm that also has been established in our building. In addition to parking shortages, traffic congestion, and reduced property value, which we already know of a buyer that backed out of buying it, Sienna, because of this tower, and the owner lost her contract. My unit and many other units at considerable personal expense have been specially adapted for physical disabilities. This is not a situation where I could easily just pack my things up and move out of the neighborhood and say, I don't want to live here anymore. My unit is adapted for my specific needs, and I couldn't, this is not a situation where I could move if my parking and safety is threatened from increased traffic, if my quality of life is diminished from this. So, thank you.
Chair? Sorry, I have a process question. I know some people have signed up to speak. I don't know if we should be working our way through that or just...
Yes, yes.
Hi, my name is Ben Campbell, and I live in 1740 Oak. I think it would be really terrible to build this new building, and it would cause more congestion. And it would also block our views of our building. And also the cast of the shadows would also block the view. So, thank you.
My name is Meg Welch, and I live at 1325 Greenleaf. And I'd like to address the affordability of this complex. As I understand it, the market value, the market rent for the 1-bedrooms is going to be around $2,800. I'd like to point out that this is not moderately priced housing. Senior housing, and there's a shortage of moderately priced senior housing across the country. Okay. So the average Social Security benefit, and you sitting on the dais, probably this won't be your situation. You're privileged. But there are a lot of people whose only retirement income is Social Security. And the average benefit is $1,369. That's 90% of the income for 23% of retired couples. For people who have never married, it is like 40, it's like 90% of their income. So, I mean, 43% of married, it's 90% of their income. So I would just like to point out that this we have a lot of luxury senior housing. And I also would like to know, I'd like to just throw out, did you pore over the inclusionary housing ordinance? Because Trammell Crow comes out and says that it does not meet it, all the provisions, and because it is does not meet all the express provisions, it's actually, according to the inclusionary housing ordinance, an alternative equivalent proposal. The express provisions that are not met, so we understand they have the choice of the fee in lieu. They've decided to do the units. That's great. However, there are some units offered at 80% AMI. You let the Albion development get away from that, so a precedent was set. So I can't blame them for putting that in the proposal. But arguably, that is not in compliance. But the ordinance is written in such a way that it's a little fuzzy there. But what's definitely not in compliance is they're not including any 2 bedrooms in this, affordable 2 bedrooms. And the inclusionary housing ordinance, which I'm sure you've all read before you came here tonight and compared with their proposal, it expressly says that the affordable units should be proportional to the units. So there has to be the same mix of, if there's a certain percentage of 2-bedroom units, the affordable units have to have the same percentage. If there's 1 bedrooms, they have to have the same percentage. So they're not including any 2 bedrooms. There are people who are in need of, the affordable units who will need 2 bedrooms. And the ordinance says that if you do not meet the express provisions of the Section 4 inclusionary ordinance, that any proposal shall show how the alternative proposed will increase affordable housing opportunities in the city to an equal or greater extent than compliance with the express requirements of this chapter. Such proposals for alternatives shall be considered on a case-by-case basis by the City Council, etc. But if the City Council determines that such alternative will increase affordable housing opportunities in the city to an equal or greater extent than compliance with the express provisions. But the point here is that any proposal shall show. I didn't see that in the packet tonight. Is there a pro forma? And I'm also, I'd like to ask the city a question. Why isn't a request for a pro forma in your recommendations? And why was this just glossed over? So my understanding of the inclusionary housing ordinance is not just, oh, you do fee in lieu. And if you're not going to do fee in lieu and you're going to do some units, then it's carte blanche and you can do anything you want. And that's not what the ordinance says. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, is last chance. Anyone? Okay. So probably a little against precedent, and if it's not breaking all the rules, I would like to ask the commissioners to either comment in a way that maybe will help them get information that they feel that they might like after this discussion for the developer to provide for the next for the next meeting, if they have any kind of requests.
We didn't make a request for extensions.
Oh,
Why
okay.
is the developer being extended another opportunity?
Because you requested it.
You requested it. Yeah. I'm caught here that with the motion to continue, I think we're going to close the case. So I'm trying to just make sure we get the information that we would like. All right. So.
I apologize if I missed it.
All right. So without that, there has been a request for a continuance to a proposed date of April 11th. Do I hear a motion or any discussion on the matter? So we'll,
I make a motion to continue this matter to April 11th.
Commissioner Saul, Commissioner Isaac. All right, there has been a motion to continue this matter. I think we should do a roll call vote on this. So if you can do that.
Sure, Chair. Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin?
Yes.
Commissioner Goddard?
Yes.
Commissioner Halleck? Commissioner Isaac?
Yes.
Commissioner Pagozzi?
No.
Vice Chair Saul?
Yes.
And Chair Lewis?
Yes. All right. With that,
Do you need to remind people about that there are no further notifications?
Uh-huh. All right. So one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure that this was not just forwarded to a date certain is that it was clear that the notification requirements for this plan development have been fulfilled by the first notification for this meeting, and there is no requirement for further notification. So please take care and know that the next meeting will be on April 11th when this will be heard. All right, thank you. So with that, we're going to conclude the hearing of case PLN D005 for tonight. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So can we take a 5-minute break while people clear the room? All right, let's do it. Thank you.
And I have the stock thing.
Well, and now
Right. Well, they probably think it's because they've released but then don't add, a gazillion more people to that.
I know.
Excuse me, everyone. Our meeting isn't finished yet, so if you could please clear the room, it would be great. Thank you very much. Or, yeah, you could stick around if you want to hear about the text amendment, but. Yeah, I'm not so happy with that. Ask all the questions at one time kind of thing. Although I was hoping that it would move faster, without the back and forth, because it goes back and forth and back and forth. And yeah, it goes right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm Claire. I'm Debbie. 1740. 302 on the third floor. So yeah. Yes, I do. My mom and dad love it. They come up sometimes and we'll have cocktails there and then we'll go to dinner. So it's great. Thanks to meet you, Rosie. I'm Debbie. Mary Jo, good to meet you.
I just want to say good job. You're welcome. I'm Jenny. I'm Mary. Nice to meet you.
All right, everyone. We're going to continue the meeting. If you can excuse me, everyone. We're still doing a meeting. Excuse me. Excuse me. This is a public hearing. Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. This is a public hearing, and we're not done with the meeting yet. Thank you. All right. The next item on the agenda is a text amendment for coach houses. The definition of coach houses, number 18 PLND 0013. Who's making the presentation?
I will, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, members of the public. This item, as mentioned, is a text amendment to the zoning ordinance regarding the definition of a coach house. It was a referral from the City Council. The City Council, as a little bit of background, has been looking at affordable housing as one of the larger issues citywide. They've been convening generally on a quarterly basis to discuss a whole list of issues regarding affordable housing. One of those specific items has to do with coach houses as a type of accessory dwelling unit. Currently, by code and by interpretation of the ordinance, those accessory dwelling units as a coach house are accessory to the primary structure, the single-family house on the lot there. And the interpretation of that is that the occupant has to be in some way related to the family that's within the primary dwelling unit, the single-family house. So the direction from City Council, and as I mentioned, there are a whole number of items they're looking at. This one, we did get a referral and did get clear direction, was to allow those to be rented out or occupied by persons who are not related to the persons within the primary structure of the house there. So we're really focusing, doing a limited text amendment just to try to address that one issue, knowing that there are a whole number of other issues regarding affordable housing and even additional issues regarding accessory dwelling units and coach houses that could be viewed in the future. But based on the referral, we do have a suggested text amendment. Essentially here, it's to add a sentence to the existing definition. The first sentence is within the existing definition of a coach house as a secondary or accessory dwelling unit located on the same zoning lot as the principal dwelling unit. We are proposing to add a sentence. As proposed, it's tenants of coach houses may be unrelated to the owners of the principal residential structure. So that is a suggested language. It could be massaged to be more neutral, and occupants of coach houses and occupants of the principal residential structure, but it is to address that one specific issue. With that concludes the staff report, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
All right. Since staff is basically the petitioner in this case, I think it's time to open it up, and we do have a bit of public left. Are there any questions from the public? Please.
I don't have a question. I just
Yep.
think you're making it legal. And I think it's very nice that you're doing it.
You should come up to the mic and say that.
Yeah, this actually is a question that just from hearing that. My name is Birch Berghart. I live at 1575 Ashland, and the alternative regulations that you mentioned did not say anything about affordability, and I have to say that when I have been heard people speaking, and when I've talked with the staff, with Sarah Flax, ancillary housing is often brought up as a possibility for expanding our affordable housing. Is it possible that that would be one of the regulations that might be considered if the coach houses became legally rentable?
Yes, this was an idea that was brought up to City Council by staff when looking at this item of potentially limiting or setting affordability level for these coach houses. We did not receive direction on that aspect of it. So it's still something that could be addressed in the future. So, tangentially, this would potentially allow for increased supply of housing. So in that manner, it could help to address affordability. Could also create more units of a smaller size, typically, that would fit on a lot with a primary structure and often over a garage. So in those ways, it could address affordability. But we did not receive direction from City Council about limiting the income levels.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, so I'm going to open it up for. We'll close the public session and go to the staff. Okay, so are there any comments by Jessica? You should say what you're going to say. Are there any comments by the public? Okay. Having no comments, we're going to close the public portion of this and go to deliberations. So now, Commissioner Goddard, you have your opportunity to get right at it.
I just have two brief questions. First of all, is there a definition of dwelling that includes things like kitchens and bathroom facilities? And second of all, is there a limit on the number of tenants that could be in this structure?
As far as the second part of the question, while I pull up the definition of dwelling, it would be the traditional limitation within the zoning ordinance is that it can be a family, and family is defined several ways. One of those ways is no more than 3 unrelated persons living there. Additionally, there are limitations within the building code and property maintenance code about maximum number of occupants based on the size of rooms and sleeping rooms. So those would both still be applicable for any dwelling unit. And for that definition of dwelling unit, it does have to do, as you mentioned, with sleeping area. So it is a dwelling unit definition is a room or group of contiguous rooms that include facilities used or intended to be used for living, sleeping, cooking, and eating, and they're arranged, designed, or intended for use exclusively as living quarters. So traditionally, it would have to have a kitchen and bathing facilities.
Questions? More? Commissioner Bagozzi?
I'm not sure if this is one question, but I think this is kind of a game changer because my understanding of the code beforehand was that you could build a bedroom above a garage, typically, and call it an in-law apartment, and you would still be in compliance. And I know that the city used to be pretty hawkish about, identifying these coach houses as a source of rentable income for a lot of people, but now that we've changed, basically you can create a small apartment unit over your garage or in your basement. What would be the limit in terms of, okay, I have a single family lot that's R1. I'm allowed to build a coach. If I have a garage, I'm allowed to tear that garage down, build a new one, and have an apartment above it.
That's correct. Yes, you'd be able to have the one coach house as a accessory dwelling unit.
Okay, so
which you're allowed to do now. However, it just now would not be limited to the
to a
occupants.
family member, right? So now, doesn't this really change the nature of R1?
It does open up the occupancy of those. It's a construction type that is present and historically present within the community and in various neighborhoods, particularly older neighborhoods. But it does allow, or as a member of the audience stated, legalize the ability to rent out those units to
now instead of
non-family members or non-household workers or someone with some relationship to the family in the structure.
So we're not scofflaws anymore. We're illegal now. So I'm just curious if this, because I know that this was scrutinized pretty heavily by the building department whenever anyone would build such a unit, and it would have to be clearly stated that, hey, I'm not, I can't rent this out to anybody. But now this is really gone, and I trust you guys have thought this through in terms, how many, do we have a sense of how many coach houses there are in Evanston right now?
I don't know if there's an overall registry that we have. I know some staff and intern staff had kind of looked at aerial photos and that sort of thing, but that's not quite an exact science to know what the use of that structure is.
Okay. Thanks. Those are my questions.
Commissioner Isaac, have you turned off your light for a reason?
I was going to point out that currently the accessory structures are limited to 1 height for a garage. So that in and of itself, like that, any new coach houses to be built, that means that I suppose you could move the garage doors into a type of accessory structure, a coach house, and I think changing as a result of this? What would otherwise be not this change to the zoning ordinance?
Okay, Commissioner Brown.
I was just going to ask how the city currently polices coach houses, and if there would be a change to that procedure.
Yeah, typically like a lot of items on a complaint basis. So if we did, receive a complaint that a coach house was being occupied or rented out to someone who's not associated with the family, then property standards and/or zoning staff would address that.
I was also going to make a point that there is a new development on Lincoln. I think it's where Kendall College used to be, and there are new coach houses that were built as part of that development.
Yes, I know it, at least on some of those there were explicit notes in the approvals, as Commissioner Picozzi noted, that included that limitation.
I don't know if my light's on or not, but will these be required to be registered with the city as rental units?
It's a good question. I believe if they're rented, they do. I'm not aware if we have a minimum size building. I believe all rental units have to be registered. I don't know if Assistant City Attorney Trento has dealt with this particular issue.
This would be a great question. I think the health department, Ellen Golden is the person responsible for the rental registrations, and it's similar to the complaint basis. We ask everyone to register, and when we are notified of an individual that hasn't, we'll have the inspectors in the health department then go and investigate. So we are requiring, we do require all to register. Whether they do or not, that's a separate question.
Any other questions? All right. Well, I have, I guess, a few. I am wondering, now by this ordinance, without any other controls in place, it seems that we've now opened up a venue for profitability of making little profit centers for people. So are there any controls on as part of this on the amount of people, whether they can go in and build new structures or start, converting every single backyard into a rental property? And then those rental properties, are there any limitations on how many tenants there could be within each one of those coach houses? I don't know. And just as a statement, I'm just wondering if it's wise to open up a definition that could set in motion a lot of actions that in the end we may want to reverse or control afterward. It's not really a comprehensive, to me, a comprehensive thing. It's just changing a definition that opens up a whole uncontrolled set of consequences. So that's just my statement. But I had two questions in there.
Okay. Yes, Chair Lewis. Regarding the first question, there are not proposed to be any limitations on number of properties within a block per se that could develop a coach house. However, there obviously are a number of other regulations and limitations within the zoning ordinance regarding lot coverage, impervious surface coverage, parking requirements. A coach house does require one additional parking space in addition to 2 parking spaces required for a single-family dwelling. The height limitation is mentioned by Commissioner Isaac. So there are additional regulations that are in place now, and none of those are proposed to change. So any structure that could be built today could also be built with this new limitation. However, as noted, the proposed changes to remove the limitation of kind of who can live there. And the second part regarding the occupancy of those, there are occupancy limitations within our property standards and building code based on square footage of the bedroom and other sleeping rooms. And then there is still the definition of a family that deals with the number of unrelated persons that can live within a dwelling unit.
So those are limitations within the R1 and R2 zoning district that affect primarily these coach houses. Is that?
They would affect all.
Because I'm wondering why it isn't. So is there a control in place already on the coach house that would then become a multifamily residence, or that if they rented it out to two separate people, I think Mr. Bogozzi said you could tear out the garage portion and make that a unit, and then the unit above that could constitute two apartments. And
Right, it would be limited to the one accessory structure, their accessory unit, and then as mentioned, the other kind of functional limitations come into play as far as providing parking for both the primary structure as well as the accessory dwelling unit.
Commissioner Brown?
Sorry, I think I need some clarification. It's been a long evening. So, if we do elect to accept this text amendment, it's still not legal to rent the coach house, correct?
No, the intent of the amendment is to allow it to be rented out to anyone, no matter the relation to the person or people living in the other structure.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Questions? So, Commissioner Isaac.
Latecomer.
Yes.
Maybe this should be referred to the zoning subcommittee.
Is that a motion? No.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Why?
I think pretty much everyone's comments with respect to this proposal have been concerned about how this would otherwise affect the rest of the zoning code. Given that, from my perspective, it's I would either be asking staff to come back with something, or we would take it to the zoning subcommittee or whatever the subcommittee is called to explore how this change would otherwise affect the zoning code as a whole.
Is it the intention of staff to further address the issue of coach houses as a continuing item? Or
It is a possibility to look at other requirements in the future. The kind of direction we've gotten on this one is a pretty discrete change from City Council, just to allow those to be rented out to non-family members. As stated, no other changes are proposed to other development regulations, so that the same structure that could be built today could still be built if this change was put into place. However, the change that would occur is who could reside in this structure in relation to the primary structure on the site.
Is the city enforcing the requirement that people living in coach houses be related to those in the principal residence? I mean, is this actually a current issue?
As noted, with many matters, enforcement is on a complaint basis often. So if we do receive complaints about that, then either zoning office or property standards would investigate those complaints there.
Okay, any more discussion? So I think we've got three choices. We can either motion to recommend approval of it, or we can recommend approval with a modification, or I guess we can actually make a motion to further study it. Is that true? Yeah, I guess, yes.
You could continue the item within the Plan Commission to another date, or refer to the subcommittee as mentioned.
Okay, or we could make a motion to deny. So I would like to entertain motions at this time.
I would make a motion to deny.
Can we? Is it better to phrase that positively?
I'll try. I would make a motion to not accept the revised language and maintain the language that exists today.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Can we, maybe staff would be in the best position to do this, I'm not sure, just summarize the issues or what people might want clarification on?
So, so we're gonna, we can do that, but I think there's a motion on the floor, so we're gonna either let that die, or we're gonna, without second, or we're going to,
Second.
Second, okay, all right, so then we're gonna have a vote, and then we might be able to go back and have,
Oh, is that how this works? Because then, like, my question is just ignored.
She has a question on the motion,
oh, all right, question on the motion. Go ahead. Oh, what was it? Oh, staff to summarize, I see, all right, staff summarize.
Sure, I can summarize the proposal, and then. Okay, and is the request the issues presented by other commissioners this evening, or the? Okay,
Yes.
so what I've heard so far from other commissioners are concern about how this change would affect the single-family character of neighborhoods, the height limit, and how feasible units would be with the existing regulations. What enforcement mechanisms are currently in place and would be in place in the future, how many of the units exist currently within the community, questions about the current and future limitations on number of occupants or number of coach houses that could be created, and then discussion regarding kind of where this item should go from here, whether recommendation to the city council based on the referral, a continuation to another meeting of the Plan Commission, or referral to the zoning subcommittee of the Plan Commission. That's kind of what I've heard so far. But
Thank you. And then also, the proposal in front of us would not change any other aspects of the zoning code. Is that accurate? So
that's correct.
The only change would be if people could build a coach house today, they could build it tomorrow. It's just to whom they could rent that coach house.
Precisely.
Thank you.
All right, so can we have a restatement of the motion?
Sure. I make a motion that we reject the language that is being proposed and maintain the existing language that is in the ordinance.
Second.
All right, so for clarification, to vote no is to leave the item open, and to vote yes is to affirm the denial. The motion is a little...
It's a motion.
Yeah,
It's a
the
motion to
motion's a
deny.
little- yeah,
Motion to
the-
deny. If you say yes, you're denying the proposal.
Yeah. It's very confusing, a negative.
I can provide clarification, perhaps, Chair Lewis. So right now you have a motion to deny. So the commission members have the ability to vote yes, meaning that they want to deny the proposal, or voting no. If there's a majority of individuals that vote yes, then it's denied, and that's the final action. If there's not a majority, then then an individual can make another motion, and it might be one of the other two options that you proposed earlier.
All right, great. So the motion has been moved and seconded, and I think we'll do a roll call vote.
And this is a recommendation to City Council.
Recommendation to City Council.
Okay, it's a roll call. Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Dubin?
Yes.
Commissioner Goddard?
No.
Commissioner Halleck?
No.
Commissioner Isaac?
Yes.
Commissioner Picozzi?
Yes.
Commissioner Saul?
No.
And Chair Lewis.
And so no means the motion is denied, so no.
It's a close one.
Okay, so it's a 4-3 vote, with the noes being the 4.
All right, so So we're now back at it again. So is there another motion or any further discussion?
I move to accept the language that was proposed by staff.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded to accept the language as proposed by staff. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Brown?
No.
Commissioner Dubin?
No.
Commissioner Goddard?
Yes.
Commissioner Halleck? Commissioner Isaac?
No.
Commissioner Boghosi? Commissioner Saul?
Yes.
And Chair Lewis?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a 4-3 vote in the affirmative to make a recommendation to City Council to accept the changes as proposed.
All right. I think that is there. I think that concludes the text amendment. Is there any other business? I guess not. Any public comment that's on the agenda? No? Okay. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So move. Oh.
It's been moved and seconded by, moved by Goddard, seconded by Saul. All right. All in favor? Aye. All against? All right. We're adjourned. Thank you.